I'm going to continue the discussion about the Aries Svamsa when your Atmakaraka falls in the sign of Aries in your Navamsa chart with a Vedic tale. And this tale is going to help illustrate the ordeal that Aries Svamsa people are dealing with from a more philosophical and a spiritual perspective. A wise spiritual guru was preparing to take a journey of 10 years, and so he left his disciple to take care of his ashram in the woods. The disciple was honored to take care of his guru's ashram and was excited to have time alone to meditate and be in peace for the next 10 years. And he thought, how much spiritual progress can I make? Wow, this is a huge boon. This is a huge gift for myself. So one day while the disciple was meditating in the forest, a mouse came and began eating his loincloth, his single piece of clothing that he had around his waist. And that distracted him from his meditation. He thought, how am I going to deal with? I can't have a mouse eating away my clothing. So to solve the problem, he put his loincloth far away from where he was meditating, but quickly realized that this wasn't going to solve the problem of the mouse, because eventually the mouse is going to eat the entire cloth and then come back and find some more food. He thought, I can't meditate naked because then I'm going to be subject to the weather and I'm subject to the cold, and then I'm going to become sick from the elements. So he had to think of something to do. And so to solve the problem, he went to the village and he bought a cat with the little money that he did have. And certainly the cat was going to scare away any mice that would come to try to eat his clothing. So he thought, this is going to be great. I can finally meditate. And the plan worked. It only worked for one day, unfortunately, because the disciple then realized that, wow, the cat gets hungry and he keeps meowing and he needs food. And if I don't give him food, he's going to run away and I'm going to have the mouse problem again. So the disciple then, he went back to the town and he started asking people for donations because he ran out of money. And he was telling everybody, I'm going to buy a cow. Because with the cow, he figured out that he would be able to feed the cat with the milk from the cow, which would nourish the cat enough to keep it hanging around and making sure he didn't have a mice problem. So he had good fortune, and he was actually given the cow as a gift from another farmer at a discount who wanted to be in good graces with a spiritual person. And so the disciple realized when he had the cow that he got so much milk from the cow, he could start making cheese and butter and then sell that cheese and butter in the local village, which would then for sure help him maintain his situation with the cat, with the repairs that needed to be made in the ashram. And he didn't want the ashram to fall apart in the 10 years that his guru was going to be away. So very soon the disciple found he was spending almost half of his day dealing with the needs of the cow. First he had to build a barn for it, so that the cow could sleep in it and not get sick. He had to milk it twice a day. And just tending to its needs, the food, the grass. He had to create different pastures so that the cow would graze in certain areas and not others. And all of this put a huge strain on his ability to meditate. And so he was, in a positive sense, now able to use the money that he made from the dairy products he was producing to renovate the ashram and create a whole fenced-in area. As I said, all of a sudden he found himself with a running farm. And a modest farm, but a well-functioning farm nevertheless. So eventually that local farmer came and he passed by this disciple's, this ashram that all of a sudden I didn't notice this before. There's a cow grazing, there is now farm animals, there's little chickens, and he was saying, this is a great place. I've got a daughter and I need to marry off my daughter. She could be taken care of with a person who's running this farm, could provide for my daughter. And so he wanted to marry the daughter off to whoever was running this farm. And so he asked this disciple to marry his daughter. And after the disciple thought about it, he said, wow, I could have someone around here to help me tend to the cow, to take some of these responsibilities. And, the farm takes a lot of upkeep to preserve. And then he thought, maybe with a loving wife and, some children of my own, that's going to make life a lot easier for me and all of the things that I'm having to deal with. Then he would finally be able to have time to meditate and advance spiritually. If he just had these other things, this family, loving presence of a wife and children to help him out with his responsibilities. And so then the 10 years passed, and the guru comes back from his journey, and he comes to his former ashram, and he sees this big house, he sees a big barn, he sees farm animals, he sees more than one cow, chickens, a woman, and a bunch of little children running around, and a guy in the field tilling the field. He thinks to himself, this isn't my ashram, maybe I'm lost. This is, something happened here. Maybe my disciple sold my ashram, but why would he do that? That doesn't make much sense. Or maybe my old age is now getting to me and I'm completely lost. So then he went to the farm and asked them for directions. The disciple came running out to see the guru and gave him a giant hug, and he showed the guru around to his farm and his family, and all of this success he'd achieved in the last 10 years. I mean, objectively, he has a big functioning farm. Materially, he's succeeding in the world. But the guru got very upset with the disciple, and he saw that he had gained so much material wealth, but it had a major cost on his spiritual growth. And he asked the disciple, how could you let this happen? Your mission was to grow spiritually and inwardly, not outwardly, and make a giant farm for yourself. And so the disciple, realizing, he had this in the back of his mind the whole time, but when the guru came, it really came to him. And he realized he had really forgotten his true goal when he had taken over the ashram. And the response he said to the guru, who asked him, how did you let this happen? The disciple says to him, well, it was all just to save my loincloth, which is saying it all started when my loincloth was being eaten by a mouse. And so what this tale is showing and expressing is that material concerns, they compound on one another throughout life. And before we know it, we become so entangled with our material life that the problems and the solutions of material life, they become all-encompassing in our mental world. And what that does is it makes us neglect our spiritual purposes, or our single spiritual purpose in life, which is to unite a spiritual sense of ourself while living in a body. And so as you can see, it all started with a mouse and a cat, or a rat and a cat, just like the Aries Svamsa sign. Just started with those two small little annoyances, and before you know it, everything snowballs into overwhelming material concern. And so this isn't to say that material life, because there are branches of Vedic philosophy and spirituality that say material life should be ignored completely. But material life we have to deal with, and we can enjoy our material life. And it's not under my opinion that material life should be banished we have to neglect all of our material needs in life. And so we're not supposed to be disparaging the fact that we're living in a material body, because that's a very extreme position to take, that material life should just be ignored completely. But in fact, I believe that our material lives are very important to helping us learn important spiritual lessons. We have to learn to see spiritual within the material. And our duty, or our dharma in our material life, is important for us to do. We all have a unique reason we're here on earth, but we don't it's not all of our duty and all of our dharma to just drop everything, go to the forest, sit there and meditate for the rest of our life. And that's what the solution of life is. Very, very small percentage of people, that's what their actual purpose in life is to do. Very small percentage, especially now in the Kali Yuga, we have different purposes. In other time periods, that is a much more of a calling for a higher percentage of people. But for now, it's not. And so it's an easy escape to say, oh, we just all have to go to the forest and meditate. That's not the solution to life, and it's an extreme position to take. And so what we have to do is learn to see material life and spiritual life as two wings on a bird. And a bird needs two wings to fly, because if a bird only has one wing, theoretically, it just flies in a circle. It can only fly in one direction, and eventually it crashes. But when we have both wings moving, we can then soar to new heights, and we can actually have a fulfilling life. But we need both of those sides of our consciousness working. A material consciousness healthy and our spiritual consciousness healthy. Then we can really fly and become better actualized people, and to live a happy life, and to feel that we're connecting to something that's deeper than us. We need both of those parts. We need both of those aspects, material and spiritual, to really get through life in a fulfilling way. And it's not to neglect one or the other. And so an Aries Svamsa person can get so hung up in the small material problems that they're neglecting to see the bigger picture of things, and to neglect the bird's eye view of things, to see things and soar above and see that there is a purpose for what I'm doing. And life isn't just solving problems and getting into conflicts and just dealing with material issues all the time, because that will never end. There's always going to be another material problem to deal with until you die. The goal of an Aries Svamsa person is to not get hung up in that, because you can lose yourself in material pursuits very easily. And so that's the deeper esoteric meaning of both the story I just told and also Jaimini's deceptively simple description of Aries as 5 rats and cats. So stay tuned for the next episode in the series. It's going to be about Taurus as the Svamsa sign.